Hey guys, Matt Mitchvich, the alternate historian. I'm here today with the start of what I hope to be a new recurring series for this channel, where I will just talk about the different alternate history tropes and cliches that permeate the genre. And I would like to start today by talking about Deseret. Deseret was a proposed American state that was founded in 1849 by Mormon settlers. It was centered around Salt Lake, but the proposed state boundaries would have included Utah, Nevada, and actually large portions of the American Southwest, including California. It never really caught on, though, because the American people never really approved of Mormonism. In fact, there was a short-lived war against the Mormon settlers in 1857. Part of the problem was that Americans disapproved of polygamy, which in this case meant a man could marry more than one wife. Do I really need to answer that question? Deseret eventually became shrunk into what is today Utah. The Mormon Church abandoned polygamy in about 1890, and today Mormons are accepted part of American culture. In fact, just recently you had Mitt Romney, who was a presidential candidate who was also a Mormon. You see Deseret in a lot of balkanized North America timelines. In these timelines, the United States never really forms, and instead there's a lot of smaller nation states across the continent. Almost universally, you're going to see a Mormon state, usually called Deseret or sometimes Utah, among these nation states. It shows up in a lot of web originals, and it also shows up in published alternate histories too, including the Emberverse series by S.M. Sterling, Russian America, and even the board game / video game Crimson Skies has a Mormon state. I can't remember right now if it's called Deseret or Utah, but it's there. So it's a very, very popular trope. Sure, the concentration of Mormons around the Great Salt Lake gives the region a very unique identity compared to a lot of other places across the country. And in fact, the Mormon Church has significant influence on the state government. So it's quite possible that you could see a Mormon state in some timeline where the United States either doesn't form or falls apart later on. Well, to be honest, Deseret would most likely be a landlocked country with a relatively arid climate. It would be surrounded by hostile neighbors who didn't approve of their religion. And because they weren't part of some larger federation like the United States, they would have even less reason to give up certain unpopular religious practices, such as polygamy. And any non-Mormons who might be in this place might find it very difficult to have rights and would essentially be a theocracy that's not their own religion. It would not be a great state to be in if you're not a Mormon male. And perhaps a touch controversial. I mean, it's really difficult to actually predict where a history will go once you diverge it. I mean, in all possibility, in some sort of later collapse of the United States, the Mormon government, being one of the few functioning governments in the region, might be able to actually grab a lot of territory, perhaps even parts of California as well. With that farmland, they could become very wealthy, and probably having to govern large populations of non-Mormons might mellow them enough that they may create a sort of a theo-democracy that protects the rights of non-Mormons and become a fairly successful state in the American Southwest. It's possible. In many ways, anything is possible. It's the debate about what's probable that will cause the major issues. Again, it's difficult to tell, but it's probably somewhere in the middle of the two scenarios I suggested. They're probably still going to be landlocked, they're probably still going to be majority Mormon, but they probably would have mellowed just so that they can trade with their neighbors, just so that they can get some wealth that they can't find in their own territory. And will that mean polygamy ends sooner or later? I have no idea. But I would assume that it would eventually end, but probably not. There's certainly countries today in the world that have polygamy, so it's possible you could still see a polygamous nation in North America well into the present time. Again, I have no idea, but polygamy is usually the sticking point when you're talking about Mormon alternate histories, for better or worse. The way I define trope and cliche is that trope's a good thing and cliche is a bad thing. In this case, I'm going to go with trope. As much as Deseret has been used a lot, it's still relatively plausible, and it still can, create an interesting story. But I would like to see people be more creative with it. Remember, the Mormon Church actually got its start in New York, and the Mormons eventually ended up in Utah. That's a wide distance to travel, and all the way in between they established communities and tried to find a place to call home. To see a Deseret spring up in maybe Illinois or Iowa, of all places, I think would be a very interesting read and a very unique twist on the trope. That being said, make sure you do your research because you just never know where history is going to go. And unless you're educated on what history actually happened, you're never going to be able to make a good alternate history. Hey guys, Matt again. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Trope Talk, maybe a name I'm playing around with calling this. In the meantime, if you guys want to see me discuss other types of tropes or cliches in the alternate history genre, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys again later. Bye.